I think fundamentally, like fundamentally life is like rather meaningless objectively. And so I think it's nice just to like try to find some meaning, and like the meaning that I right now resonate with is just kind of like competing against the clock. Like when I think back to my Bob Graham, which is like, I think my like greatest like athletic achievement.
Contextualize the Bob. How big, how much for?
I did 12 hours and 23 minutes, and it was 63 miles and 25,600 feet climbing, or 26,600 feet climbing or something. And that was like the first time I raced Killian. That was like the first time second time I guess I raced internationally.
And you set the
biggest
record
stage.
on it.
Yeah, biggest stage I'd ever done. And I think if I were to go back and do that, it would be really, really hard for me to push that hard again, because I don't have like the need to like validate myself maybe that I did then.
Do you have any memories of oftentimes people black these things out. I certainly do, but the harder parts of SEAL training.
Yeah.
Where God, it was just so brutal, and you really your mind needed to focus on something, and you focused on something else. I mean, do you have memories like that? Like, where would your mind go maybe before these were such regular patterns in your life?
I see. I don't know. Like, I think a part of it is like, I just really like, the adversity. And, I'm sure somebody can armchair that, like, as like, coming from like, an upper middle class family, like in, one of the, Connecticut's a wealthy state. I was from Roxbury, a pretty wealthy town in Connecticut. I just have like, sought out these experiences because, I like the adversity, in kind of a controlled context like that. But,
did you feel like an anomaly in the SEALs training program in that sense, in a socioeconomic sense? I mean, my understanding is a lot of these guys are not.
It's all over the place. Yeah.
It's all over the place.
It's all over the place. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it seems relatively unusual to go through the hardest version of military training from an upper middle class background. Except, I mean, to me, it seems like people who might one day want to become a politician maybe do that, but it's somewhat unusual.
Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, the SEAL teams, I would bet, skew higher, socioeconomically, the people who come into it than the rest of the military. So that was never a thing for you. Didn't have any sort of feeling of social not fitting in. No, I felt that a bit, but it wasn't because of my socioeconomic background.
What was it because of?
There were some things like, there are many, SEALs are enormously diverse, the people who are there. But that being said, I was always public with the information that I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And,
so politics.
What's that?
Politics.
It was politics. Yeah. So that came out at a dinner that we were having at some restaurant. Like one of the other, like there was a pause in the conversation. Like one of the other new guys was like, "Hey, Jack voted for Hillary?" And I was like, well, like I thought this was already common knowledge. I thought we'd already all discussed this. And it was like, the forks like hit the table, and it was like people were like screaming in my face and like walked out of the room. And it was like a lot of, like I was like definitely not the best SEAL. Like I don't, certainly I think there were some aspects of the job I was very good at. There were other aspects of the job I was okay at. I think like part of my problem was for sure is like when I was going through BUDS, I noticed that the physical stuff in BUDS just didn't affect me as much. And I think, I don't know, I have almost come to the conclusion that must be genetic, or that must be something deep in my psychology. I think part of it may have been a physical thing.
That's why I keep trying to get to the yeah.
No. So I noticed in BUDS that for some reason I was predisposed to do BUDS like things, and I'd always kind of observed that. But BUDS, you're put into a very elite pool, and I felt like relative to the other people who were there, the training just didn't, the sleep deprivation, the running, whatever else, for whatever reason, it just didn't affect me as much. I don't think that's any reflection of training I did or anything. I think that's just naturally.
But politically, ideologically, you felt a little bit of a fish out of water. I'm curious about this because certainly the kind of bolder outdoor industry scene, just even broader, just everywhere, is like very liberal.
Yeah.
And maybe even beyond a lot of times. Pretty far left.
Yeah.
But your experience with a group that represents the right, let's say, of different parts of that spectrum, like do you find those experiences have made you somewhat more ideologically flexible, or do you see ideological rigidity? And like, what do you feel when you encounter ideological rigidity on either side?
Well, yeah. So I would say yes, it's maybe much more flexible, because like you go from, it was just crazy. You know, there were conservatives at Yale in the same way there are liberals in the SEAL teams. You know, I think I went from basically, you know, a 180 there. And like, the thing that always struck me is like, I would be exposed to SEALs, and just to say something else, like, what I thought was very funny was, was when we were in second phase going through the dive training, we are like learning, you know, so you have to go submerged with a rebreather, and you have to swim underwater, and you have to execute like a course underwater. So like, they drop you off outside of a harbor, and you have to swim in entirely underwater and like go and like, you know, locate targets and stuff, everything without surfacing. And so you have to have like, you know, very good, I don't know what, spatial awareness. You have to be very intelligent to do this. This was something I was not good at all. And there were times like I would hand like the underwater compass off to my partner, because I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I'm just, you know, I just lack, you know, whatever is required. But I just remember kind of like joking with guys, like, here I am, I went to Yale, like, you just have a high school education, and like, I am incapable intellectually of doing this, and like, you are so much better at it than me. So in the teams, I really like learned that a lot of the people I went to college with were like very good at school, but they may not have been terribly like bright, you know, like maybe they were bright as reflected in like a college classroom or as a standardized
in
test.
terms of solving like an unconventional problem that one hasn't encountered or considered, and doing it quite quickly with novel means.
Yeah.
And like bright. Is that what you mean by bright?
That's what in that context. Yeah. And so just to say all that, there were SEALs that I knew in the SEAL teams that I knew were very intelligent. May not have been very worldly in some contexts, but I knew were very intelligent guys. And they were so rabidly like absolute about their political views. And it was the same as the people at Yale.
Very dogmatic.
Yeah. And it was the same as the people at Yale. Like, both of those two groups of people were as convinced that they were right. And it's like, well, both these groups of people are like fairly intelligent. And so it's like, I came to the conclusion where, you know, I think I have a lot more, I definitely have way more sympathy for people who have like differing political views than I do. I mean, to include like some like, you know, quite extreme things, because I see how like someone can be raised in a different context and like absorb that stuff. And I also kind of, you know, part of being in the teams was very discouraging to me, because like I made an effort with, I mean, this just sounds ridiculous. I made an effort with like one SEAL I was like good friends with. I was like, I am going to, you know, show him the light and just kind of bring him a little bit more center was my goal.
You were
for like
trying.
2 years. Yeah. I was trying. I was really, really trying. And what I came to the conclusion would be, what I need to do is I need to open his mind to like alternative forms of media. And then that's all I need to do. And then once he opens his mind to that and starts engaging with other forms of media, then he will teach himself, was like my goal. And I was unable to do it.